I'm recording. I don't think we had any new pull requests. So maybe we want to start with actually looking at the in progress issues, I guess.
Sure, and there was there was activity on a couple of them, I think.
Sorry, in the and the issues or in
In
the
issues, I know Dave Lemire commented on issue 30. So that's one we could. It was again, one of my creations to begin with, and we can not do it if people don't think it's a good idea to do and finalize that piece of our scope. But,
what are the full issues? Is it bigger?
Yeah, so my basic comment is this kind of feels like not our job.
well, it's going to be somebody's job. I thought it
Right.
was, I'll call it business opportunity for Oasis and for Pace in particular to get a bunch of people to care about what we were doing, because it's basically sort of the core of Pace to figure out those attributes. It came about because in the U.S. government SBOM effort, the U.S. government made a conscious decision to not pick a winner. There's 3 different formats, and they said, we don't care what format you use, just make sure you got this information in it. Okay. And so the NTIA is part of the executive order, President Biden's 14028 executive order explicitly told NTIA, hey, come up with this minimum element stuff. So it did, and it published that like last September-ish, I'm going to say. And then it tasked CISA with, hey, go make the federal government do this. And so in several of those meetings, several people from several different industries have saying, hey, we need something to like tell whether these things are good or not. And in particular, the electric utility industry said, hey, maybe we need to have, I don't remember the name of their body, but this body, certify these things. And the medical device people said, but that's not going to help us. We're the medical device people. And so there's sort of this concept of maybe there's going to be a bunch of industry specific bodies. I mean, maybe Underwriters Laboratory or somebody will pick it up. But it's sort of like the same thing Sticks Preferred does. It's hey, do you meet this minimum set of standards because somebody figured out some conformance specs to meet? In this particular one is particularly tricky because there's 3 different formats. So obviously, if you gave it to Linux Foundation, they're going to pick something that makes SPDX always win. And if you give it to OWASP, they're going to pick something that makes Cyclone DX always win. And if you give it to NIST, they're going to pick something that makes SWID tag SBOMs, which are different than, or SWID SBOMs, which are different than SWID tags, always win. And they'll probably never do it because they don't have enough staff and they don't ever get around to that stuff. So the thought was, hey, somebody at some point could maybe do this. If it's beyond our headlights, then fine. I think it does relate very closely to Pace because we have to actually pull these minimum attributes out of, and probably more than the minimum, we have to pull out whatever's there, we have to figure out the security posture affecting attributes that are in SBOMs and in other VEXs and in things that have nothing to do with software bill of materials. And so since that would be challenging for us if we let everybody do anything they felt like willy-nilly, we might be a logical place to come up with at least a set of, hey, at least for our needs, this is the set of conformance specs you need to meet to sort of feed pacey things. And if you did that, it would sort of be like Sticks Preferred, and that might get a bunch of people to participate. It might also open a huge can of worms and massive political fights and might not be worth it. I do know Oasis was sort of looking for things to, at the time when I put this contribution in, which was back when it sort of first came up in the SBOM stuff back in the 3rd or 4th quarter last year, Oasis was looking to, hey, how do we get more people to go to everything? Because it basically means more money for Oasis when you do that. And I thought it might be an opportunity, but if no one wants to do it, I'm perfectly happy with saying this is outside our scope. It's really up to you all. I'm just offering it as an opportunity. I will in no way run it. I want, in one sense, nothing to do with it because it will be a pretty big deal. But, 5 years from now, it could be like every company on the planet's part of whatever, whoever decides to do this, this will eventually be a really big deal. Probably anybody involved in software anywhere will probably play a part in it. So if we choose not to do it, just remember that 5 years from now. If we choose to do it and it's a royal pain in the butt, then yell at me for that too. But because it will be a royal pain in the butt, but it is potentially a UL-like thing, a big deal.
Okay, so that gives me better context and understanding. Not sure if it changes my conclusion or not. I probably need to think about it for a bit. I guess at least in the short term, it feels like maybe it might be a distraction, but maybe it's something we can kind of work incrementally as we go, figuring out, okay, this is what we really wound up caring about out of the SBOMs that we're playing with, and then circle back to it later. I don't know.
Sure.
Just thought.
And if somebody else like, the Linux Foundation or UL or the electric utility industry in the meantime comes up with one, we can resolve it. We can harmonize with them afterwards.
Right.
So do you want me to just leave this in progress or?
Well, it sounds like I think we're, again, probably want Dave and Jason's view and your view, Sarah, as well. But if it was just Dave and I deciding, I'm not going to, follow my sword over this. And sounds like Dave's hesitant. So my view would be, if at a minimum, it'd be for now, like we did on one of the other ones, this is outside our scope for now. We'll revisit it in the future.
Okay. So I'll add a note.
But Sarah, what is your view? Or Dave Kemp, what is your view? Or Jason, what is your view? You guys want to dip our toe in this water or kick it down the road?
I mean, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say, I don't know that I have enough information to know. I mean, I'm kind of divided. And so maybe that's why it should be brought up at a later time. I have a very, go ahead.
No, yeah, sorry, sorry, Sarah, I didn't finish your thought.
Well, I just have a very minimal exposure to SBOM in general. I've gotten Cyclone DX to work. I have had trouble getting anything with SPDX to work, and it does seem like there's things out there, but I don't think I have enough knowledge or exposure to really provide an accurate view on it at this point in time.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah, so my perspective on it, Duncan, is I think it would be great if if Pace is going to generate SBOMs, right, which is
not going to generate, it's going to ingest them.
I believe going to ingest them. It's not. I thought okay.
Pace is basically an SBOM, pulls security information out of SBOMs. It's not going to be. I mean, you create SBOMs when you build the software and stuff.
Yeah, sorry. What I mean is, so my understanding is part of what Pace was going to do as part of posture assessment was evaluate. It was going to look at the SBOMs that were on the endpoint, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
Correct.
if Pace is going to consume, consolidate, report on the SBOMs, right? Then I do think so. It would be fantastic if it could kind of champion this work, but if the group, the big question is Pace ready to take this on, right?
That's
And
an excellent
work
question.
to do it, because we can pontificate and say, wouldn't it be great all day long, right? But the project, there's only so much bandwidth, and if it's not realistic to take it on, then it probably needs to be put in the back burner, right?
Yeah, and sort of at a minimum, I would say we should at least kick the can down the road till after the automation workshop in June. Because if we do actually do some of these, ingest SBOMs derive the security information from them, maybe even kick out SBOM. One of the SBOM use cases is sort of, suck in an SPDX, put out a CDX, or vice versa. One vendor makes one and the other vendor makes the other, and some poor schmuck has to, do something that combines the two because they're building their own code and they use this dependency for the one and this other dependency for the other. Tools that do that actually exist already. In fact, some of them I think have even agreed to participate in the workshop. So that we sort of get over some of those, I'll call it initial humps. We're probably in a better state in, I'll say, the summer. We'll probably never do anything in the summer, so maybe the fall, but sometime after that to then look and say, hey, this wacko idea of Duncan says it doesn't actually really fit in with what we're doing and make sense, or is it, no, this is just, well, A, someone else has taken it by now, or B, it's not really our thing and there's no one here to work on it. The problem is if we do decide to work on it, other people will come to work on it, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. So it might sort of, devolve into just that, not everything we were intended to do. So could go either way. Let's kick the can down the road till at least after June and maybe much further, but at least for now, let's defer it.
And then with these, I forget, did we just leave these in progress or did we do something when we said we're gonna take a look later?
What we agreed to before, but again, someone's got to actually do it, is we leave them in progress till we actually get the text out of the issue and into some scope
Okay.
document, which we probably need to work on.
That's what I thought. Okay, I just want to make sure. All right. All right, let's go to another issue. Was there another one off the top of anybody's heads that we know was commented on?
I think if you click on the issues button up at the top there, it'll give them to you, I think, in last touched order. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. This is from 10 days ago. What is this?
Yeah, and
This is,
I just opened it. I didn't do anything on it, but I did, as part of the one we talked about last week, add the FAQ, which caused me to actually read the README. And it is the README from before we started. So I just might suggest to other people to read it. And if you would like to freshen it up a little, I think it could use some freshening. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not giving very specifics here, but I'm just alerting people to, I think we've moved beyond some of the things that are said in it. If nothing else, if we agree to everything that's in there, we should update some of the dates in it because it has things like, as of, this October date or whatever. I don't know that it's the highest priority thing, but since I noticed it, I made an issue.
there's, I was looking, so put it in progress probably.
Yeah.
All right. So make sure that's saved. Okay. Back to issues. Then we have this one. This is just the one that we were on, right? Or no?
No,
Yeah.
This is,
I just submitted that before you looked at the list here. So Dave Lemire and I had been talking about this issue under OpenC2 rather than under PACE. But, it concerns the interface to the attribute retrieval service, as well as control of the posture collection service. And so I'm trying to figure out if for the SBOM retrieval use case, that could be a mixture of OpenC2 commands and repository interface. So, if we're going to design something specific to test, we'll need to think of what interfaces we want to use to do that testing. And I think only part of that is OpenC2.
So Dave, if I could ask a question, do you see there being two PACE interfaces? One is an OpenC2 command that says, hey, give me this SBOM, or give me this, or put this SBOM in, or give me this SBOM out, or give me this evaluated data about posture from however you did it. Those three would all be OpenC2 commands, but there'd be a different type of command that wouldn't be an OpenC2 command. And are you saying that would be to do X, you always use this other command, and to do Y, you always use OpenC2? Or are you saying, no, there's sort of two ways to do it? You do this with OpenC2 commands this way, or you could do it with, I don't know, native database commands or something this other way? Is this an either or is this a pick one and we don't do the other, or is this a, no, we'll sort of have both?
Yeah, Sarah, if you can go back to where you just were up at the top. Yeah, so the use case is your decision maker wants to know what SBOM apply to device X. And so there's options for doing that. You can query the device itself. You can query a device manager, which could be the PCS, or it could be a LICAN that talks to a device management system. You could query a repository using OpenC2, or the fourth way is if you've already got a database of devices and SBOMs, you could just query that database using a database protocol. So we would need to think of what we want to demonstrate, and that's sort of the questions raised by this issue. And you said you were thinking about a GraphQL Elixir database. I was thinking about GraphQL. And so the very first thing you could do was, forget about OpenC2 entirely. You just set up a GraphQL database, populate it with a bunch of SBOMs and a bunch of fake devices and a bunch of random links between random devices and random SBOMs. And then you could issue a query to that PAR, and for laptop 397, it has these 5 SBOMs on it. So that's
what I'd call the vendor non-agnostic way to do it, because my database would have different commands to do it than your database with, and somebody else could do it with a relational and it'd be yet different.
Well, no, GraphQL. If you say the PAR interface is GraphQL, then that defines what it is, and everybody can.
Oh, but then we're defined. Okay, but that, I think at first blush, I think it's too soon to do that.
Oh,
at least
right.
the work I've done already, I've had 3 different interfaces, and it actually makes a difference which one you use. So I'm not sure I'm smart enough yet to agree with that. And you may be right, but again, then we pick the interface already.
Well, yes, for the June version of the CAW, yes.
Okay.
That's not cast in stone, but do we want to even have something that will crawl? And that's one way to crawl by June.
Right. True. I was coming at it more from the, hey, let's make some of these so we can try and work towards so they might have, I'll call it the hand waving interface at this point, but so we could work towards what I thought would be the standard interface, which I thought would be an OpenC2 interface, not a standard database interface.
Okay, so that's the first 3 options there. Query the device, query the PCS, or make up an actuator profile for a database, so that you could issue an OpenC2 query to that. And later on, I suggested that would be a total waste of time, but it is an option. I don't think we ought to write an actuator profile that does database queries.
But why is it different than the device interface? Why is the OpenC2 command any different?
All
It's
right.
not a database query. It's a OpenC2 query command with a target of the device with a request for the SBOMs. What SBOMs do you support? Whether I ask that of the device or ask that of the database, why would the command need to be any different?
Okay, it doesn't. I'm thinking of PACE use cases, not just
No, I understand, but I'm
not
saying
just the standard for the command.
right, but why, at least for that particular one? I'll get to the fancy.
So for that, yes, the OpenC2 command itself should be the same regardless of the destination. I agree.
Right.
I agree with that.
So I don't think you need to do query stuff. And then, I mean, I don't think you need to do fancy query stuff because I think that's sort of the under the hood, the Lycan or whatever says, oh, because it's this kind of database converted to this kind of query. But it's really, because I'm not asking for, 100 of them across 100 devices. I'm asking for a one. So it's sort of the same as looking at the device.
Yeah.
I think if you ask for 100 across 100 of them, or you ask for, I'll call it the fancier evaluation stuff, I do think one of the things to look at would be something like sticks patterning, which again is not a database query language. It is sort of like one, but it's designed around basically security observable stuff, which sort of is what the same thing we're doing is. So again, I haven't got far enough to know I'm smart enough to do that, but I'm pretty sure I'm leaning more towards just OpenC2 commands that just happen to go to a PACE thing as opposed to go into a device thing or a device manager thing. It sort of doesn't matter which one you go to, the command looks the same.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll lean toward that. We'll query the PACE PCS with a command. And then the question is, what does your response look like? And that's the next group there. You can actually return an entire SBOM or a whole pile of SBOMs in the OpenC2 response, or you could return URLs for them if they're stored on a web server somewhere, or you could return SBOM IDs that could be looked up by their ID. It's an ID rather than a URL. And I'm not saying that list is exhaustive, but for crawling, you want to define an OpenC2 response that you can use to demonstrate.
Yeah, I was going, and again, I'm not necessarily thinking this is the right way to do it, just what was in my head was I think more crawl, simpler version of I wasn't going to worry about URLs and go look somewhere else. It's just going to be either you got the data, give it to me. I was not going to handle the I don't got the data, somebody else has it case. And I was not going to handle the well, I could give it to you, or I could just give you something else and you got to ask me again for it case. I mean, I was going to try and handle the what do you have for choices case, so that the sort of OpenC2 agreed to sort of split up the hey, we got 3 different formats, and I think it's 8 different serializations, and 3 different states where you could get it from, and n number of sources, all for a particular device's SBOM. I was going to at least give it the first command is, hey, what do I got for choices? And then once you know what your choices are, and even if you knew them, if you already knew the information, you'd have to use that first command. Then you just say, hey, give me X, and give me X either in its, I'm going to call it raw data form. You got an SBOM stored in there, give me the SBOM back. Or the fancier case, which I didn't know if we'd get to by June, would be, give me the information I need about the SBOM. I don't care about the ones and zeros of all the details. I care about, you correlated it with the CVE and weighing against some particular threshold, and give me the binary trusted or not or whatever. But that's probably running the headlights. But more importantly, I think the simplifications I was looking at were things like, okay, it's there's these 3 different formats. Great, let's use all 3, or maybe let's use 2 of the 3 because no one really cares about SWID SBOM formats. Let's just focus on Cyclone DX and SPDX. And Cyclone DX can be either XML or JSON, and SPDX can be any one of 7 formats, 2 of which are XML and JSON. And all said and done, even the XML is a pain in the butt. In OpenC2 commands, which happen to be JSON, let's assume they don't have to be JSON, but in the cases we've been dealing with to date, we usually focus on JSON. So why don't we just simplify everything and say, let's say conceptually you can do this with anything you want, but let's just do the JSON versions for now. And so even if you ask, hey, do you have, all 7 formats? Once you get the answer back, you say, well, but give me the JSON one. And that way the OpenC2 JSON command has an embedded JSON SBOM or VEX, because that can be in JSON as well. Or even the evaluation stuff, once we get to it, let's just say, hey, let's just pick JSON for the answer. And then we don't need to worry about these, binary blobs and base 64 and all that other kind of crap. Just again, for ease of simplicity to begin with, that functionally the command should set up that they can do anything, but for what we actually do, let's at least focus on JSON. That's where I was headed. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It means that if you're going to do that, you need the entire definition of the full SBOM in Cyclone DX format and in SPDX format. And your consumer or your producer needs to be able to interpret that response and do that. So
Well,
there's one option that I forgot here on this list. A 4th option would be you return JSON data that just contains the NTIA 7 minimum fields or whatever they are.
Or whatever it is you need. I was sort of
Yeah.
thinking along those same lines. That thing I said that I didn't explain very well was, could give me the whole SBOM or give me what I need from the SBOM. No, what you
Right.
might be the 7 minimum, might only be 3 of the minimum because you don't need the other 4 for your particular use case. I think you always need all 7 though. But you maybe need the 8th one or whatever. I don't know. But again, this concept of you could return the data as opposed to the SBOM.
Yep. Okay. So yeah, I guess my main question here was just procedural. Should this be a PACE issue or should it be an OpenC2 SBOM profile issue, which is what it is now? And we can do that discussion.
It is sort of both. Well, the PACE decision is, as you said, should we use an OpenC2 interface to do this, or should we pick one of the other ways? And I'd at least promote, at least in the beginning, hey, let's try and make the OpenC2 one work. And then it becomes a PACE decides, hey, we need the ability to do this, and here's the features we need. And then OpenC2 does that, comes back with, well, using OpenC2, you can do it this way. So it is in one sense, a little messier because both sides have a responsibility, but I think it's actually the nicer long-term answer. Is PACE does the PACE stuff and OpenC2 does the OpenC2 stuff.
Yep. Okay.
But that's just my thoughts. I don't know what everyone else thinks.
Well, it exists and GitHub is public, so anybody can comment anywhere they want. So. But just wanted to have a pointer to OpenC2 from PACE,
Right.
so that we know that that is an issue.
So were there any other thoughts on this?
Just looking at all the other issues, they're much older. So there hasn't been progress yet.
Oh, yeah. Or you're looking at,
Yeah, I looked on my own side list at just to make sure we shouldn't bring up one. Hey, somebody said something or other yesterday, but nope, the rest of them get old quick. It doesn't mean we shouldn't work on them. I'm just saying we're not leaving somebody out that we forgot their comment. I think we've covered all the recent comments.
So Duncan, are you going to bring a Raspberry Pi Blinky to the CAW?
It is on the CAW now has a website. It's a website made from GitHub pages, so anybody can make pull requests against it. The governance section of the website says it's a Duncan democratic dictator model. That's up to me whether to accept it or not, but anyone can do it. And there is a section for use cases and a section for what people are bringing. And what I'm bringing is sort of a copy of what you've seen in both the PACE use cases and the OpenC2 use cases. But yes, I am bringing both Blinkies. Bringing several Blinkies, several Twinklies, and the just prior to RSA version of the quad block quiz game, which will be played at RSA the following week at the supply chain sandbox with prizes. So I do have to update those questions to get more newer relevant stuff for SBOMs, OpenC2, and add a section for PACE. There's not a PACE section in the game yet, but I will add one. So yes, I'll be bringing all that to the Plugfest, and then just the day after the Plugfest, I'll rewrite the game so that the game is ready for supply chain sandbox the following Tuesday, with basically the results from whatever we decided.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, once we query query an SBOM and have our hand waving evaluation, which is a random coin flip, then we'll tell the Blinky to flash green or fireworks if it's all okay, or flash red explosion if you're under attack.
Right. Or I don't know what maybe yellow for sandboxed or something. Yeah, sand is yellow. Or maybe they'll draw a little box. That's the way to do it. I don't know. I'm going to spend more time drawing the LED patterns that I'm doing in OpenC2 code. But yes, along those lines is what I was thinking. And I have on my to-do list, but I don't think I'm going to get there to try and put the 5G interface into the Raspberry Pi. So it will have to be on the Wi-Fi with all the stupid security stuff we'll have to do right.
And get the commands documented. So we'll need to
Yep.
figure out what that interface is in terms of a profile.
Yep.
All right. I'm not sure if we're over or just getting to time. Is this meeting supposed to be 45 minutes or an hour? Because I have it on twice.
Yeah, it was listed as 45. But
Okay, then we are definitely over. So I'm going to stop the recorder.
Sounds good.
And because I have another meeting coming up.